Hello everyone, Jeff here. Sorry we didn't have an update for last week. I recorded some footage, but things just didn't turn out the way that I had hoped they would. So this week I'm going to be joined by a couple of the other developers, and we're going to be working on my whiteboard, kind of just designing the northern islands that the fishing demo will be taking place in, putting together some of the just the landscape and the points of interest and that sort of thing. Now the audio will be of that, and occasionally I'll try to cut in some of the photos of my whiteboard that I'm actually working on, but the video itself will be me working in the Toi Landscape Editor, putting together some of the stuff after the conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. So joining me, we have Loco.
Ahoy, ahoy.
And Gina.
Hello.
And we're going to be working on the Antilia map that we're putting together for the fishing alpha. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Okay, so I've got to try to fairly decently copy this to my board. Oh boy. Okay, so that's kind of the northern coastline. That's not bad. And I'm just going to kind of wing it a little bit with these islands. I'm not going to follow the map so much. So we basically have two large islands, which I'm going to break up a bit, but I think they're still going to be kind of collectively similar in shape.
You mean like it's going to be one landmass, but with very, very varied terrain?
Well, I'll break it up in the sense that I'm going to add some lagoons in the middle and stuff. I want to create, for my landscape tool, I'd love to create like whenever I draw a shape, I'm using splines, so it comes out nice and smooth, but I'd like to add a fractal line modifier on that so that the thing could automatically generate some noise on the edges of the map or on the edges of landmasses. It'd be cool if you can like tune that up and down a little bit, so you can still have like nice smooth coastlines where beaches are, and then jagged ones where rocks are. So I'm really tempted to try and add that this afternoon before I start drawing the map, because I think it'd be kind of a really nice detail to have. I don't know if I'm breaking these up into too much, or it's so hard to know until you get a character on the ground, right? So the way I've drawn this out, I ended up with 14, 15 islands, which is a bit more than we planned, but...
That is indeed a lot.
See, it doesn't really matter in a sense whether we break one island into two or three when it comes to those bigger islands. Maybe
It's a nice amount of variety, though.
Let me take a quick photo of this. I say quick, but I'm going to have to run downstairs and grab my camera. I'll be right back, and that way we at least have a setup where we can start talking about what I'm doing. So I'll be right back. Okay, so there's a terrible photo of my whiteboard. So you can kind of see if that larger top island, I've broken it up a lot, maybe too much. It would be nice to have at least one moderate sized landmass, perhaps. I'm thinking maybe I should eliminate that left lagoon, kind of combine some of those islands into, I don't know, I kind of like the two lagoons in some ways. And then that center island can be where we put the city of Liège or whatever.
Yeah, Liège.
We need to start using names that are memorable, because that's pretty bad. I want to move where that lighthouse is. We have the Mezzi lighthouse kind of way off the side. I'd like to move that a little closer to Ariel. Maybe that little island, well, it needs to be somewhere practical, right? Like, where would they put it because of rocks? Kind of feels like that lighthouse should be somewhere like maybe a little rock outcropping just in the entry to the harbor of Ariel Bay there. I'm going to put an extra island right on the entrance to Ariel Bay, kind of in that little, I don't know what we call that, a little strait or something. And I kind of want to put the Mezzi lighthouse there just because, I don't know, it's kind of a cool place for a lighthouse to kind of be at the entrance of the bay. And it's kind of a, don't hit this giant rock that's here.
Although we do have a lighthouse on the very tip of the peninsula in the Ariel Bay.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, maybe I'll move that one then. Okay. And I'll maybe take another photo just so we're still on the same page here. And I think we'll just kind of keep doing this. And so we should see kind of, I've moved a couple islands around. We now have the Chaurid Lighthouse kind of on the entry to Ariel Bay there, and I kind of put some rocks around it. We might move the exact position of lighthouse, of course, no big deal. And with Liège, I kind of like this idea of it being on this kind of center island surrounded by two lagoons. Is that overdoing things? But I don't know, it kind of appeals to me in some ways. The right-hand mountain, I believe we were kind of suspecting it was going to be kind of mountainous. So maybe I'll draw some mountains on that.
If we are going to have two lagoons on the right-hand aisle, and we may have to have us like a solid island, the one on the left, without a lagoon.
This is kind of following that photo where they're kind of like, yeah, shallow lagoons. So there's like the middle island with Flizé. It'll probably be mostly flat. I put some mountains on the right-hand island, and then there's one kind of to the northeast. I put mountains on the right-hand side of that, on the eastern side. And then as we move further to the west side of those islands, I think, yeah, we'll probably go more towards forest. So maybe I'll draw some trees on that. And there should probably be a nice sandy beach somewhere. Maybe on the inner side of that left lagoon. We could put a nice sandy beach.
That would be a good idea because it can be a tourist location as well.
I was thinking about that the other day of that Lizé and these northern islands, they might be kind of like almost like a vacation spot for people in Ariel. Place to get away from the busy city and just enjoy the islands. Location of the first Tepi theme park. With that, let's think where we'd like to put maybe some cool ruins. We've got the lighthouses, but I'd like to have some other ruins as well.
The island on the far left, perhaps that could be some sort of mysterious island where the Tapi tend to stay clear of, perhaps?
It could have a ruin on it or something, yeah. And we also were thinking about some kind of like cool formations like the basalt or crystals. But I might save that for the other set of islands to the west.
Yeah, the triple archipelago.
Yeah. I think those islands over there would be cool to, yeah, have that less of a populated place and more of a exploration kind of point. Although I wouldn't mind having some little settlement somewhere or a campsite or something. Like almost every island should probably have a campsite, right?
That's a good idea. It could have like sort of an explorer's campsite where all the travelers who are researching for old relics and totems, they have their own little campsite where they, help each other out, sell items and.
Yeah, I'm just kind of
throwing.
I'm throwing some just scattered across the map in places that look maybe like it'd be practical, as far as access and maybe near interesting features. Another thing we talked about is a sake garden. So I think maybe I'll remove this little campsite I made and make that our sake. It's not really a sake garden, but more like a sake campsite.
A place to rest, to recover their strength.
Yeah, let's figure out where we want to put maybe some basalt formations on some of these western islands. And real quick, I'll throw some beaches on here too.
Yes, sadly, the basalt formation, I'm not really sure where to place them because there is no real volcanic activity on the Northern Isles.
Yeah.
At least according to the map we have. Of course, that means we can always add them, like add a volcanoes or volcanic activity.
I was thinking maybe I'd put some mountains on this, not the furthest west island, but the second furthest to the west on that little set of 3 islands. That western one, I think I'll put some mountains.
The basalt steps are very cool when used as a coast.
Yeah.
For example, in Ireland, they have this set of basalt prisms that looks like a giant steps, and that's why they call it a giant steps or a giant's causeway.
Where I think I'll put them is on the inside of that western set of 3 islands, on the inside lagoon area. I'll put it on the eastern side of that left island. So that coastline would be basalt, and that way you kind of get to see the basalt coastline from the other islands rather than it being on a coastline that's facing away from everything. I think that'd be kind of cool.
You could create a sort of lagoon with the coast, like inside coast, being formed by these basalt steps.
Maybe I'll throw it around and let it actually cross over onto the other island as well. That's cool, I like it. Okay. And I think maybe I'll go ahead and maybe put the crystals kind of in the same area as the basalt. Just kind of have that left set of islands just kind of be cool that way. Maybe I should do another photo real quick here. So there's an updated version of the map, and now we've got some mountains indicated, and we've got some, wherever I've kind of outlined the coast the second time with orange, that kind of indicates a beach, sandy beach. And then on those left islands, we can now see kind of like the little pink dots are where I kind of expect the crystals to be kind of mixed in with the basalt formations, which are the little square diamond things. Well, I think we've kind of filled most of that in. There's a couple outlying islands that we can maybe think about real quick here. Definitely on that set of 3 over on the left, there probably should be a cool ruin somewhere.
Or maybe the furthest island to the west. That seems like a very remote place and a perfect place for some lone Saki hermit.
Yeah, I put a ruin kind of near the basalt thing, just because it seems like maybe there'd be some previous race might have had some use for mining that area or something, so maybe that's kind of like a mine or something maybe. And then yeah, that far east island, we're getting real remote, especially from the standpoint of there's no real Tepi villages near that, so yeah, I wouldn't mind throwing on that ruin. We could maybe do the ghost town kind of thing, where it's not just a single building, but it's like a little town that's no longer in use. So. Saki graveyard. Now those are actually supposed to be a thing now that I think about it. And the thing with a Saki graveyard is the Saki don't really die, they just turn themselves into stone and go into dreamland forever. At least that was the old theory.
Like a mausoleum of statues.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of statues of Saki, but really it is the Saki. They could technically come back if they wanted to, but they're really old. Their bodies are kind of worn out from all the shape shifting. Gets more and more difficult over time, I think.
I just think it's just really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of potential there with the Saki, sleeping per se, and then going into a dreamland where, we could have an opportunity where we can wake one up to speak with them for whatever reason, only temporarily. I mean, that's kind of coming off to the topic, but there's a lot of story there.
And yeah, I think something like that almost certainly will happen in a story. And you might not have to wake them up. You might just kind of approach them and then maybe be able to kind of, from their physical manifestation, follow where they are into the dream or something. So you can find them in the dream. We do technically have a Saki model that Abigail could pose in a few different ways. We could give it a stone texture. We could actually do that, is what I'm saying, which is kind of cool.
That'd be great.
So I'm trying to decide, should we put the Saki graveyard next to the Saki camp? Because it kind of makes sense those two would be next to each other. Like you might need the camp if you're for some reason going to visit someone who's in the graveyard. Like a Saki might actually go there and talk to someone. So
I think that's a good idea.
I think we should probably put the camp and the graveyard kind of in the same. They're the same thing, kind of.
Yeah, in the same zone.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the island that's close to the Sharit lighthouse, there is a precedent for one specific formation in geology where the waves encircle the island and hit the coast, and they create sort of like a cone of sand that comes from the mainland towards the island, but not exactly on the surface, only very, very shallow.
Like a
triangle.
sandbar?
Yes. I will try to demonstrate it.
I'm kind of drawing that in. Yeah, I can kind of see that working, having a little sandbar there. It would kind of like cut that little channel off from larger boats passing through. Overall, I think this is looking pretty good. I rather like it. We thought about having something like a desert island. It's just kind of like rocks and sand. I guess we could do that there maybe, because it's already connected by a couple sandbars. It could kind of just be a rocky, sandy island with maybe a couple palm trees or something, just to break things up a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that working out. I mean, it's just kind of spread out, I guess.
Okay, well I've got notes on pretty much everything except for a couple of the smallest little islands. I I think that's really a decent start. I'd kind of like to maybe next take this into my landscape editor and start kind of roughing it in and seeing what it looks like with a character running on it.
Yeah, it's slowly coming together. It's nice to see.
Well, okay. Thanks for joining me, to the both of you. I think we're going to wrap this up.
Well, thank you for hosting. Thank you very much.
I think we got some good work done. So I think next time we'll try and talk about characters. I think that'd be fun.
That'd be great. I have so many ideas for characters you wouldn't believe.
Great. Okay. See you guys later.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
A special thanks goes to this month's Patreon supporters. If you'd like to support the project, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Antilia.